not memories, not just the cold. Something else. Things that stay buried all year under wet soil behind sealed walls, beneath old roots, in places where light barely reaches. Things that know patience better than we do. Things that never forget. It has been a long time since I last spoke about any of this. Long enough for silence to feel safe. Long enough for people to think stories were over. That whatever happened was left behind. In those houses, on those roads, inside those wells, in those quiet villages. But it was not over. I told you about some of it before. Abandoned roads, locked rooms, houses where something seemed to breathe behind the walls, sounds rising from empty wells, marks carved into wood older than the houses themselves, places where the air changed first. And only then did you realize you were not alone. But there were things I never told you. Not because I forgot, not because they did not matter, but because I still could not see the whole pattern. Back then, I thought these were separate stories, separate wounds, separate curses. I thought they belonged to one family, one house, one village, one piece of land. I thought if I walked away, if I stayed silent, if I stopped looking, they would stay there. I was wrong. Some darkness is not tied to a place. Some evil is not buried with the dead. Some things do not stay sealed. They move through people. And after enough time, if you look closely, the pattern begins to reveal itself. You realize what you saw in those houses was never only there. The same hunger exists elsewhere. Larger, wider, crueler. In cities that smell of fear before they fall. In streets where danger arrives before blood does. In lands where war begins long before the first gunshot. It begins inside people. In famines that do more than empty stomachs. They consume mercy, memory, faith. In massacres that are first named, then justified. Then repeated so often that horror becomes normal. And after you have seen enough of that, you can no longer call it coincidence. No. Behind some destruction there is something older than greed, older than rage, older than politics, older than ordinary hatred, something ancient, something that feeds on humiliation, on hunger, on war, on fear. On the moment one human being decides another human being is no longer worthy of mercy, that is when the door opens. People think evil always arrives with a face, a name, a monster at the door, a voice in the dark, but not always. Sometimes it enters like a habit, like an idea, like a whisper, like the quiet pleasure of watching someone else fall, like the moment suffering stops shocking you, like the moment cruelty starts sounding reasonable, like the moment terror becomes ordinary. That is the worst part. We think these forces are outside us, but they have been among us for a very long time. In our words, in our choices, in our silence, in our fear, in the moments when we know something is rotten, and still allow it to live. That was when I understood the rituals were never only about summoning. The symbols were not just leftovers from the past. The unfinished ceremonies were not just stories about the dead. They were warnings. They were doors. They were reminders of an old truth. Some things do not need to be invited into this world. They only need us to make room for them. The more fear grows, the easier their path becomes. The deeper hatred goes, the less they need to hide. And the more blood is spilled for human reasons, the easier it becomes for ancient things to wake. Some things do not awaken because blood is spilled. They awaken when bloodshed becomes normal. And whatever waited beneath the roots was never alone. It was never just a village curse, never just a missing bride, never just a ruined family. It was part of the same darkness that breathes where mercy is called weakness, where cruelty is called sacred, where suffering becomes routine, where people put out the light inside themselves and call it survival. That was when I realized silence is not safety. Some evils do not disappear when ignored. They grow, they take root, they wait, and one day they return, not with one face, but with 1,000. So when autumn came back, I did not feel like I was returning to an old case. I felt like I was stepping into a war that had started long before me. A war that does not belong to one family, one village, one witness, or one victim. This is our war against something that returns again and again with different names, different faces, but always the same purpose: to extinguish the light inside human beings. And if there is anything this story is meant to teach us, it is not only how to be afraid, it is how to recognize it, how to name it, how to resist it. Because there are doors we did not open, but if we do not stand against them,